Think Laos is only quiet rivers, golden temples, monks walking at dawn, and backpackers drifting through sleepy mountain towns. Then explain why one plateau is covered with thousands of giant stone jars, carved by a civilization that vanished before anyone could write its name. Explain how a river disappears straight into a mountain, travels for more than 7 kilometers in total darkness, and comes out the other side as if the earth itself had swallowed it and changed its mind. Explain how an entire political capital, with homes, hospitals, offices, schools, and even a theater, once existed inside caves, while the world above it was being bombed into dust. And explain why, in the far south of the country, the Mekong River suddenly breaks into thousands of islands and a waterfall so wide that maps reduce it to a simple blue line, even though no boat could ever treat it like one. Today, 7 impossible places in Laos. Every one of them is real. Every one appears on a map. And yet, when you actually stand there, the map feels like the least truthful thing about them. Laos is often described as landlocked, quiet, forgotten. A country between larger histories, Vietnam to the east, Thailand to the west, China to the north, Cambodia to the south. But that description is already wrong. Laos was never empty space between other civilizations. It was a corridor, a refuge, a sacred landscape, a battlefield, a kingdom, and in some places, a secret underground world. Here, mountains hide rivers, stone fields hide the dead, temples are built like diagrams of the universe, waterfalls stop empires from moving upstream, and statues built in the 20th century somehow look as if they were dragged out of an ancient fever dream. None of these places should be simple, so we will not treat them simply. We begin on a plateau where the dead may have been stored in stone. Northern Laos, Vieng Xai province, a high plateau of grass, wind, mist, and scars left by war. At first, the landscape looks almost empty. Rolling hills, sparse trees, dirt roads, cattle moving slowly through open fields. But then the shapes appear. One jar, then another, then dozens, then hundreds. Across the plain of jars, more than 2,000 massive stone vessels are scattered over the hills. Some are taller than a person, some are cracked, some are half buried. Some stand upright as if they were placed there yesterday, waiting for someone to return. The official explanation is that these jars were part of Iron Age funerary practices, dating roughly from 500 BCE to 500 CE. Archaeologists have found burial objects, human remains, stone discs, and evidence that the sites were connected to rituals involving the dead. That explanation is reasonable, but it does not make the place feel less impossible. Because the jars are not small objects, they are not pottery, they are carved from stone. Many weigh several tons. Some were made from rock, quarried far away from the places where they now stand. That means someone had to cut them, shape them, move them, and arrange them across a difficult landscape without modern machinery. And then that culture disappeared. Not with a clear ending, not with a written record, not with a final inscription explaining who they were, what they believed, or why jars were the correct shape for death. The most disturbing thing about the Plain of Jars is not that we do not know anything. It is that we know just enough to understand how much is missing. The jars were made by skilled people. They had organization. They had ritual. They understood stone, labor, transport, and landscape. They left behind one of Southeast Asia's most haunting archaeological signatures. But they did not leave their name. Even now, many jar sites remain difficult to study because the region is still affected by unexploded ordnance from 20th century bombing. Ancient death and modern war lie in the same soil. Before archaeologists can ask questions about 2,000-year-old rituals, teams must first ask whether the ground is safe to step on. A field of stone jars should be a clear archaeological site. Instead, it is a locked conversation between the dead, the earth, and bombs that never exploded. And the jars keep standing there, silent, open, unanswered. From a landscape of stone containers, we move to a river that should not be able to pass through a mountain. Central Laos, Khammouane Province. The village of Kong Lor sits near limestone cliffs that rise like walls at the edge of another world. Here, the Nam Hinboon River does something that feels impossible when you first see it. It flows into a cave. Not a short cave, not a small tunnel, a vast limestone passage more than 7 kilometers long, known as Kong Lor. You enter by boat. The daylight behind you shrinks. The sound of the outside world disappears. The engine echoes against stone. The water turns black beneath you. The ceiling rises into darkness so high that your light cannot always find it. For long stretches, there is no sky, no horizon, no sense of scale. Only water, rock, and the feeling that the river has become a road through the inside of the earth. The official explanation is geology. Limestone dissolves. Karst systems form. Rivers cut channels through mountains over immense periods of time. Kong Lor Cave is not magic. It is the result of water, pressure, minerals, time, and erosion. But geology explains how it formed. It does not remove the shock of the place, because maps show mountains as barriers and rivers as lines. Kong Lor breaks both ideas at once. The mountain is not a wall. The river is not a surface feature. The landscape is double-layered, one Laos above ground, another Laos hidden underneath it. For local communities, the cave is not just a spectacle. It connects places. It shapes movement. It changes how people understand distance. On one side, a valley. On the other, another world. Between them, darkness. Tourists now pass through with headlamps and guides, but imagine being the first person to follow that river into the mountain without knowing whether it continued, whether it ended, or whether the darkness had any return. At certain points inside, the cave opens into chambers so large they feel like abandoned cathedrals. Stalactites hang overhead. Mineral formations rise from the floor. The boat glides through silence that seems older than human language. Kong Lor is not impossible because science cannot explain it. It is impossible because the human mind keeps rejecting the scale. A river should not need a tunnel through a mountain, and yet in Laos, it does. But not every cave in Laos was shaped only by water. Some were shaped by survival. Northeastern Laos, Hua Phan Province, Vieng Xai. The mountains here are beautiful in the way dangerous places often are. Green, steep, quiet, and full of hiding spaces. From the outside, the limestone cliffs look natural, almost peaceful, but inside them, an entire hidden city once existed. During the years of intense conflict in Laos, the caves of Vieng Xai became a wartime headquarters and refuge. People lived and worked underground. Leaders held meetings in caves. There were sleeping quarters, offices, storage rooms, communication areas, a hospital, schools, and spaces for performances. A capital without streets. A city without a skyline. A government inside stone. The official version is history. The caves protected people from bombing. Their location near the Vietnamese border gave them strategic importance. Limestone mountains offered natural shelter. People adapted because they had no other choice. Again, the explanation is logical, but the reality is almost unbearable to imagine. What does it mean to live in a place where daylight is dangerous? What does it mean for children to learn lessons underground while aircraft pass above them? What does it mean for a community to build routines, administration, medicine, and culture inside caves, not for a few nights, but for years? Vieng Xai is not just a war site. It is proof that humans can turn the inside of a mountain into a political world, not a temporary bunker, not a hiding place for a single attack, a functioning underground society. The caves were not designed by architects. They were not built as a modern underground city. They were natural cavities, transformed by urgency, discipline, fear, and endurance. And that is the disturbing part. The impossible thing about Vieng Xai is not the caves. It is the fact that people made normal life continue inside them. Above ground, the map showed villages, roads, mountains, and borders. Below ground, there was another map: rooms, corridors, leadership, memory, survival. Most countries hide their secrets in archives. Laos hid some of its secrets inside mountains. Far to the south, another kind of hidden map was carved not by war, but by belief. Champasak Province, near the Mekong River. At the foot of Phou Khao Mountain stands Vat Phou, one of the most important ancient sacred landscapes in Laos. At first glance, it looks like a temple complex: ruined stone structures, stairways, terraces, carved lintels, and a long processional axis leading toward the mountain. But Vat Phou is not only a temple, it is a map of a universe. The landscape was planned around the relationship between mountain, water, city, and shrine. The mountain itself was sacred. The river was not just nearby, it was part of the design. Reservoirs, roads, temples, and settlements were arranged across kilometers of land to express a Hindu vision of cosmic order. The official explanation says Vat Phou belonged to the ancient Khmer cultural world and was shaped over more than 1,000 years. It was connected to religious worship, especially Shiva, and later became associated with Buddhism. But stand on the axis of the site, and the official explanation begins to feel too small. Because the builders did not simply place a temple in a beautiful location. They turned the location into scripture. The mountain was not background, it was the center of meaning. The waterworks were not only practical, they were symbolic. The approach was not just a path, it was a ritual journey from the human world toward the sacred. This is architecture on the scale of landscape. And the question becomes uncomfortable. How many ancient cities have we misunderstood because we looked only at the buildings and not at the entire terrain? Vat Phou should not be read like a ruin. It should be read like a sentence written across mountain, river, and stone. But parts of that sentence are missing. The people who planned this sacred geography understood alignment, authority, religion, water management, and political symbolism. They created a landscape that still feels intentional after 1,000 years of weather, abandonment, and change. Modern maps mark Vat Phou with a dot. But the ancient builders were not thinking in dots. They were thinking in axes. And if you reduce that to a tourist pin, you have already lost the meaning. From a sacred mountain, we move to a forest of stone, where even the surface is only half the story. Khammouan Province again. Hin Nam No. This is one of Laos' most extraordinary karst landscapes. A world of jagged limestone towers, deep forests, cliffs, caves, sinkholes, and underground rivers. In 2025, Hin Nam No was recognized as part of a transboundary World Heritage Landscape with Vietnam's Phong Nha Ke Bang region. On paper, that sounds like conservation language. On the ground, it feels like the earth has been broken open. Hin Nam No is not a gentle forest. It is sharp, vertical, difficult. The limestone rises in blades and towers. Valleys disappear between walls. Caves cut through the mountains. Rivers vanish and return. Much of the landscape resists easy access, which is exactly why so much of it has survived. The official explanation is geological, karst evolution over millions of years. Water dissolved limestone. Caves formed. Forest adapted to the strange terrain. Species survived in isolated pockets. But again, the official version stops at the surface. Because Hin Nam No is not only a protected area, it is a reminder that maps are often arrogant. A map shows green forest and grey mountains. It does not show how hollow the mountains are. It does not show every chamber, every underground river, every sinkhole that drops into darkness, every species living in a fragment of habitat cut off from the next by stone. One of the most astonishing features of the region is the presence of enormous river caves, including systems connected to the Vieng Xai. These are not small holes in the ground. They are underground corridors, large enough to change how you think about the word cave. In places like Hin Nam No, Laos becomes vertical. Life exists above you, below you, beside you, and inside the rock. The forest is not one layer. It is a stack of worlds. This is why the place feels impossible. Not because it violates nature, but because it reveals how little of nature a flat map can hold. The surface is only the cover. The real book is underneath. Now, we follow water south until the Mekong itself becomes unrecognizable. Champasak Province, Siphan Don, the 4,000 Islands. Here, the Mekong River spreads out into a maze of channels, islands, rocks, sandbars, and sudden drops. Then it reaches Kone Phafeng Falls, one of the most powerful waterfall systems in Southeast Asia. It is not impossible because of height. It is not the tallest waterfall. That is not the point. Its impossibility is width, force, and interruption. The Mekong is one of Asia's great rivers, a moving highway of water connecting regions, ecosystems, trade routes, and cultures. But at Kone Phafeng, the river refuses to behave like a highway. It breaks itself apart. The official explanation is simple. A waterfall system on the Mekong near the Cambodian border, massive in volume, historically difficult for navigation. But for centuries, that difficulty mattered. Empires and colonial powers could map the Mekong as a route, but Kone Phafeng turned the line into an obstacle. You could draw the river as continuous. Boats could not experience it that way. That gap between the map and reality changed history. The French, who dreamed of using the Mekong as a route into China, had to confront the fact that the river itself had placed a locked gate in southern Laos. Channels, rapids, falls, and islands made the dream of easy navigation collapse into foam and rock. And even today, standing near the falls, the mind struggles to connect what it sees with the blue line on a map. A line is calm. Kone Phafeng is not calm. It roars. It fractures. It throws white water across the landscape. It turns the Mekong into something closer to a living machine. The local name and the surrounding islands carry stories, livelihoods, fishing traditions, and ecological importance. But the deeper mystery is this: how can one of the world's great rivers appear so simple from above and so chaotic from the ground? Kone Phafeng is not just a waterfall. It is a warning that maps lie by simplifying. They must. Because if maps showed what places really are, some rivers would look like broken thunder. Our final impossible place is not ancient in the same way as the others. It is not a cave carved by rivers, not a temple aligned to a mountain, not a field of funerary stones. It was built in the 20th century, and somehow that makes it even stranger. Near Vientiane, close to the Mekong River, stands Xieng Quan, better known as Buddha Park. At first, the name sounds peaceful. A park, statues. A tourist stop, something simple. Then you see it. More than 200 concrete sculptures fill the ground. Buddhas, Hindu deities, demons, animals, mythological figures, cosmic symbols, and strange hybrid forms that seem to belong to several religions and dreams at once. A giant reclining Buddha stretches across the park. A massive pumpkin-like structure opens through the mouth of a demon, inviting visitors to climb inside and move through symbolic levels of existence. Heaven, earth, and hell compressed into concrete. The official explanation is that the park was created in 1958 by Luang Pu Bunlo Fa Sulilat, a mystic and spiritual artist influenced by Buddhist and Hindu ideas. That explanation is true, but it does not prepare you for the feeling of the place. Because Buddha Park does not behave like a normal religious site. It is not exactly a temple. It is not exactly a museum. It is not ancient, but it imitates the weight of antiquity. It is playful, unsettling, devotional, theatrical, and surreal all at once. Some statues look serene. Others look monstrous. Some feel like teachings. Others feel like warnings. The entire park seems to have been built from a private cosmology made public before anyone could decide whether it was art, religion, madness, or genius. This is why it belongs on this list. Not because it is older than history, but because it proves that impossible places are not only discovered, sometimes they are built. A map can label it Buddha Park, but that label is too neat. It does not explain why a demon's mouth becomes an entrance. It does not explain why concrete can feel like mythology. It does not explain why a modern sculpture garden beside a river can seem more ancient than its own age. Xiang Quan is a place where belief did not ask permission from categories. It simply became landscape. 7 places. A plateau of stone jars made by a vanished culture. A river cave where water travels through a mountain. A wartime city hidden inside limestone. A temple landscape designed like a cosmic diagram. A karst forest where the true world continues underground. A waterfall that breaks the Mekong into thunder. And a sculpture park where mythology hardened into concrete. What connects them? Not fantasy. Not conspiracy. Not the need to pretend science has failed. What connects them is something more interesting. The distance between seeing a place on a map and understanding what it really is. Laos is often described as quiet, but perhaps quiet is the wrong word. Some places are quiet because they have nothing to say. Laos is quiet because too much of its story is still trapped in stone, water, caves, forests, and ruins. The Plain of Jars does not shout the name of its makers. Kong Lor does not explain why darkness feels larger than daylight. Vieng Xai does not tell you how people endured years beneath the earth. Vat Phou does not translate its entire sacred geometry for modern visitors. Hin Nam No does not reveal every chamber beneath its forest. Kone Fa Feng does not care that maps want the Mekong to be simple. And Buddha Park does not fit into any category clean enough to satisfy a guidebook. These places exist, but they resist being reduced. And maybe that is why they feel impossible. Because an impossible place is not always a place that cannot exist. Sometimes it is a place that exists so completely that our explanations are too small for it. Write in the comments which of these 7 places stayed with you the longest: the stone jars of the dead, the river inside the mountain, the hidden cave city, or the waterfall that broke the Mekong. And if this journey changed the way you see Laos, support the video, subscribe, and come with us next time. Because some countries are not missing from the map, they are hidden beneath it.